Is Michael Van Buren poised for a bigger role in the LSU offense against Alabama? We'll talk about it. Locked on LSU. Here we go.
You are Locked On LSU, your daily podcast on the LSU Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Okay, let's get it. It is Locked On LSU, your team every day. I'm your host, Matt Moscona. Thanks so much for making us your first listen. We're free, available wherever you get great podcasts, of course, on YouTube as well. So please subscribe. As always, one of the fastest ways to help us grow is by leaving your comments below. So thank you sincerely for that. Welcome to our friends watching us on the Gulf Coast Sports and Entertainment Network. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. It is LSU Alabama week. Frank Wilson met with reporters on Monday out at LSU, and there was a lot to discuss, including the adversity he's gone through in his career and how that makes him certainly rarely suited to manage LSU through this period. How Blake Baker's defense can get its swag back, but we'll start with something that a lot of LSU fans have certainly been wanting to hear about, and that's the possibility of Michael Van Buren seeing an increased role in the LSU offense. Listen, at this point in the season, you very much are what your record and the statistics say that you are. This is an 8-game sample at this point, and LSU's not very good offensively. It's not like in the first month of the season where you might play, one team might play a couple of a low G5 and an FCS team, and you put up 60 points and it skews your statistics. There's a large enough sample to where the averages have the averages hold more weight now. And LSU is 83rd in scoring. They're 124th in rushing. They're 50th in passing. There's not a very good offense, and that doesn't really matter who at this point that they've played in the season. And so a lot of people have called for Michael Van Buren. And one of the things that I shared with you when Brian Kelly was fired and Frank Wilson was named the interim is I did have some conversations last weekend where it was made pretty clear to me that there were some members of the LSU staff that wanted Michael Van Buren to get a shot. Now, I don't know necessarily, you know how I feel. I'm not laying all of the struggles of this offense at Garrett Nussmeier's feet. Whether he's playing injured, discomfort, to whatever degree, I've told you my feelings on that. If it was Joe Sloan and the unwillingness to run the football, which is something I've certainly talked about, a really poor offensive line, some really good defensive fronts, and the combination of all therein, I think, is what's all combined for LSU to be what it is. But the bottom line is you are what you are. And so how do you fix it? And there were some members of the LSU staff who did lobby before Brian Kelly was fired for Michael Van Buren to have an increased role. So it stands to reason with Frank Wilson coming in that you might actually see a Michael Van Buren package. Now, when Frank Wilson had his first media availability a week ago, he said Garrett Nussmeier is the starter, but Van Buren has a skill set, and if they can use it, they will. And he was asked that again on Monday in advance of the Alabama game, and here's what Frank Wilson said.
As I spoke about, Garrett is our starting quarterback. We do think that Michael brings some special things to the table that makes the defense have to defend him as well. And so we'll look at the opportunities that present itself to him for us. And when they present themselves, we'll take advantage of it.
It's undeniable, obviously, that Michael Van Buren's mobility, his ability to run the football, would be a different component that Garrett Nussmeier does not offer. And in this week in particular, you're facing a team in Alabama that has been susceptible to the run, not just by running backs, but also running quarterbacks. Look, Lenora Sellers ran 18 times for 67 yards and a touchdown, a long of 17. Now, there were 2 sacks mixed in there as well. So Sellers ran the ball effectively. You can say, well, Lenora Sellers is a giant human and a physical freak show. And you'd be right. Well, Diego Pavia for Vanderbilt ran 12 times for 58 yards with a long of 36. So he's not a physical freak show, but managed to find some room in the running game. You can go back to the season opener whenever they played Tommy Castellanos and Florida State. Castellanos ran 16 times for 78 yards and a score, long of 14. So it's not like you're talking about guys that were ripping off 40, 50, 60-yard runs, but they were consistently able to get yardage against the Alabama defensive front. I'm not so sure that's something Garrett Nussmeier can do, but that is something Michael Van Buren could do. Now, I don't know also that I am totally sold on the idea of Van Buren because of the success that he had in the game against Southeastern Louisiana, which is what a lot of LSU fans saw when they saw Van Buren for the first time and said, Eureka, look how good he is. And the point that I've made pretty consistently is, yeah, but he went into a game against an FCS opponent in the second half up 6 touchdowns. What really do you know? And he ran 4 times for 16 yards and a score in that game. It was 10 of 12 for 122 passing. But he did, look, and he ran 5 times for 7 yards against Texas A&M. He was sacked twice. So if you're thinking just to avoid the sack yardage, that's not necessarily exactly the case. Van Buren, a season ago for Mississippi State in the 8 games he played, ran 69 times for negative 12 yards. Now, keep in mind, of course, sack yardage takes out of that. He was sacked 27 times, but the point, 27 times in the 8 games that he played. He played in 9 games with 8 starts. So it's not like the mobility has completely allowed him to avoid sacks. Again, he was sacked 27 times last year in 8 starts for Mississippi State, and he was sacked twice 2 weeks ago against Texas A&M. So I don't know that I think starting Michael Van Buren or playing him the lion's share of the snaps makes you a better offense. I still think Garrett Nussmeier, his dynamic ability throwing the football and his experience, his arm strength, all of that stuff makes Nussmeier the better option. However, if you do feel like there's an opportunity for Michael Van Buren to add a different dimension in this game, in particular one that Alabama has struggled to defend, then I'm for it. Remember, if you caught our previous episode, shout out to the Everydayers, where we talked about LSU's kind of issues at left tackle in this game against Alabama, why I think that might not be as big a deal as it was a week or 2 weeks ago against A&M. A&M's an elite pass rushing team. They're top 10 in the country in sacks and TFLs. They sacked you 7 times and had 11 tackles for loss. That was a big deal. Alabama is 72nd against the run, and they're 82nd in team sacks. They don't pressure the quarterback, and they really have struggled to stop the run, which is why Frank Wilson reiterated again on Monday that LSU has got to run the football.
I think one of the keys for victory for us is that we will have to be able to run the ball. I think it's something that you have to invest in, and you can't just talk about it and say you're going to do it. You got to do it, and I think it helps us from a passing game standpoint to be more effective. I think it helps in holistically complementing your defense as well. And I think we have talented backs that can do it. And so Harlem's growth has been one that's been continuous, ascending for our football team. But we had not made the total commitment to running it, whether it's Harlem, whether it's Caden, throughout the game. And when you look at as a unit, as a running back unit, when you run the ball less than 20 times, you make it challenging for yourself. And so we're going to try. We started off, I thought, in our last outing that we ran the ball effectively in the first half. Situation change, scenario change that, we kind of abandoned and went to the pass game. We're going to try to go into this game plan, into this game, intentional on running the ball effectively. And I think we'll be able to turn to both Harlem and Caden in that regard and sprinkle in some Jawan here and there as well so that we're able to run the ball effectively.
Again, your head coach is the running backs coach. Your play caller is an offensive lineman by trade. I would be stunned if LSU doesn't commit to running the football against Alabama. You heard Frank say there, when you're running the ball fewer than 20 times, it's a problem. Well, look at what happened against A&M. They didn't run it fewer than 20 times. They threw it 39, and they ran it 27. You can go back and look at the Ole Miss game, which is one, of course, that we're all going to point to as one of the more disgusting offensive performances for this team this season in a game where you really had a great chance to win. LSU threw it 34 times. They ran it 22 times. You had a massive disparity in the run and the pass. You have to find balance, and hopefully that's something they're able to find Saturday in Tuscaloosa against Alabama. But one thing I think is certain is there will be a commitment to running the football. Whether they can do it effectively remains to be seen, but there will be a commitment to doing it, which should take a lot of the pressure off of Garrett Nussmeier, that offense well. Could also shorten the game, play some keep away from Ty Simpson and that Alabama offense. I love the concept of going to Tuscaloosa and committing to running the football and seeing how it looks. The other part is the defense has to play better. That's objectively true. And Frank Wilson talked about how he and Blake Baker are working on that and work through that this bye week. It is Locked on LSU, your team every day. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you missed the start of the game or you want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team's making that late push. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. We can talk all we want about LSU's offensive inefficiencies, and they are real. It's a thing that has actually plagued this team. But the bottom line also is that against Texas A&M, your offense didn't give up 49 points. Now, A&M did have a punt return for a touchdown, but the defense gave up 42 points in that football game. I mean, Texas A&M racked up 426 yards against the LSU defense. Vanderbilt scored 31 against you. You know, the South Carolina game, you won 20-10. Ole Miss only put up 24 because you were able to come up with some key turnovers, but Ole Miss put up 480 yards in that game, 314 passing, 166 rushing. The bottom line is LSU's defense, which we all thought, hand in the air, yours truly included, maybe leading the charge at the beginning of the season, was going to be an elite defense. And clearly they have not been able to live up to that billing. Now, maybe part of that is the fact that you've had some key injuries. No doubt. Your defensive line rotation has been limited with Gabe Relaford being lost for the season, Bernard Gooden and Jamari Butler missing the Vanderbilt game. Those are real things. I mean, the lack of, Whit Weeks, obviously now being out the past couple of games, that's a real thing. The fact that you have had key injuries, especially in your defensive front seven. But, Frank Wilson was asked about Blake Baker and what he thinks they can do to improve the defense here for the final month.
I think he is a very, very talented coach who wants to contribute, who want his side of the ball to excel. And here's what I've said to him: you don't have to do it by yourself. We're a team. We're three phases of a football team, and the things that we need to do to allow our defense to get its swagger back, let's do those things. Let's incorporate these things into a practice setting. One of the things for him was, Coach, I need to see physicality in an inside run drill, if you will. You got it. We're doing it tomorrow. All right, so we'll get a little roughed up, if you will, and play inside run offense against defense so that we're given the best sample size. It won't be a full-out scrimmage. We're not doing those things in season, but we're going to mix it up a little bit so we can see speed and physicality that when our defense sees it on Saturday, it's not shocking because of the look you've gotten all week has not been realistic. And so there's been portions of the practice schedule that he has asked for that we're going to give him to allow us to simulate a game situation best. But he's been fantastic. He's all in. The defensive staff is all in. And we're going to give them those things that they need defensively to get their swagger back.
It's actually kind of remarkable to look at LSU and Alabama because statistically and in performance, their defenses are so similar. For example, if you look at scoring defense, LSU in scoring defense is 22nd in the country. It's really pretty good. Alabama's just 2 spots better at 22nd. At 20th, excuse me. When you look at total defense, for example, again, you're talking about 2 teams that are very comparable. LSU in total defense is 36th in the country. Alabama's 24th. Again, 2 teams that are pretty comparable there. If you look at rush defense, unfortunately, LSU 51st in the country in rush defense, but Alabama is 72nd in the country in rush defense. As much as LSU at times has struggled stopping the run, Alabama's been worse. But Alabama is top 20 in the country in pass defense. LSU 31st in the country in pass defense. So they're almost mirror images. They've given up both defenses have given up a lot of yards, haven't necessarily given up a lot of points. And they're better against the pass than against the run. I mean, these really are 2 very comparable defenses. But the thing that maybe I loved hearing most from Coach Frank there talking about the conversation with Blake Baker is the collaboration. It's to say, Coach, what do you need? And if Blake Baker says, I need physicality because I need to show my guys physicality on the line of scrimmage during the week, so it's not a shock to them when they get to the game on Saturday, because Alabama is a very good passing offense, but Alabama is going to try to run the football. I would tell you that's probably the biggest difference between the 2 teams. Now, statistically, again, it's funny because they're actually comparable. LSU's 124th in rushing offense. Alabama's 114th in rushing offense. The big difference is Alabama scores 10 more points a game because they throw it for 291. That's been the big difference, has been Ty Simpson. But at times, Alabama has been able to run the ball when they've needed to run the football. And it hasn't been a great commitment. The 2 teams, it's so interesting. They've just been so similar when you look statistically. The difference is Alabama, because Ty Simpson has been outstanding, has made plays to win close games. That's basically the difference. And LSU flatly hasn't. They didn't make the plays on the road to beat Ole Miss. They didn't make the plays on the road to beat Vanderbilt, games where they could have won those games. Now they got whitewashed by A&M, but Alabama got whitewashed by Florida State. So it goes to show you the margin is very slim between these 2 teams. But I am going to be interested to see how the LSU defense holds up against Alabama, because this is a matchup that plays into LSU's strength, so to speak. Bama, not a great running team, and LSU struggled to defend the run. Meanwhile, LSU excellent in the secondary, whereas that's Alabama's strength as well. They want to throw the football to Jeremy Bernard and Ryan Williams and their great tight end, and that's kind of where LSU at times has been their best. It's certainly where they're more talented, is in the back end. So how that plays out will be fascinating. Frank Wilson did also give an update on Whit Weeks, who it looks like is going to miss another game this week. And if you're an everydayer, that shouldn't surprise you, because on the Friday when we were in Nashville before the Vanderbilt game, I told you I saw Whit Weeks in a boot, started asking around, and it certainly was very apparent to me then that Whit Weeks' injury was more serious than what Brian Kelly was letting on. And he was not going to play against Vanderbilt. And I told you that Friday before the Vanderbilt game, he wasn't going to play against Vanderbilt. He wasn't going to play against A&M. And they would be optimistic that he would get back for Bama. And here we are the week of the Bama game. He's still in a boot. And Frank Wilson saying they're going to try to get him out there to see what type of pain tolerance he can have. I know Whit Weeks wants to play in this game, and it would greatly benefit Blake Baker's defense if you had the guy that's your emotional leader, that makes the calls defensively, is in the center of your defense. It raises everybody's energy level. And by the way, is a really talented football player as well. I just don't know that it's realistic that you're going to have Whit Weeks back this week for the game against Alabama. Maybe by some great effort, he's able to get out there and give you something. But I think they also want to avoid a setback, so you'd have him for the remainder of the season. But Whit Weeks, we'll keep an eye on that as the initial injury report will come out Wednesday, and we'll let you know how it all is transpiring, if the Tigers are going to get their emotional leader back in the center of that defense. Now, speaking of emotional, Frank Wilson's pulling out all the stops this week emotionally to get his team ready to play Alabama. We'll tell you why he's doing it next. Locked in LSU, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. College football is back, and I couldn't be more excited. The tailgates, the rivalries, the energy in the stands, there's just nothing like it. But let's be real. Actually getting tickets can feel like more of a battle than the game itself. Endless queues, hidden fees, prices jumping at checkout. That's why I use Game Time, the app that gives the advantage back to the fans. It's the easiest way to score last-minute tickets at the best prices with no surprise fees. What you see is what you pay. Pulled up Game Time, just a couple of taps, saw amazing deals. Talking about your favorite college football games as low as $25. Honestly, it's faster, cheaper, and less stressful than any other way I've bought tickets. So take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download the Game Time app today. You know, Frank Wilson is a guy that, as we've talked about, is an amazing communicator. It's one of the reasons he's been one of the best recruiters of this or any era. And considering what Frank has been through as a head coach, taking over the job at UTSA amid a program rebuild, really, as the program was relaunching after Larry Coker, and then at McNeese, what he went through there makes him, I guess, sort of certainly suited in a rare instance to take on the adversity of this moment at LSU.
My history has been a startup program. My history has been a probation, COVID, Hurricane Laura, Delta, freeze, flood, get the job in January, play a spring season. And so adversity, troubleshooting is something that we've done well. I think we're prepared for this moment. I'm prepared for this moment to lead our football team, to lead our university, and to a better place than what we're currently in right now. I think right now our team is improving. I think we're a better team today than we were last week, simply because the student athlete, the players have bought into the things that we are trying to accomplish. First of all, they've acknowledged this is what we have done, this is what we have not done. And I think that's the first step. Once you acknowledge it, then you allow yourself to be open to constructive criticism, both for us as a coaching staff and for student athlete. And now we can move on. I think we have identified those things as a staff and as a team, and we've made the necessary steps to better ourselves. And so I feel confident in my ability. I feel confident in our staff ability and want to better this team, and certainly our student athletes who are eager and chopping by the bit to be prepared to play their very best.
You know, Frank has had the opportunity a couple of times to talk about if he wants this job full time, and both times he's rebuffed that question. But let's be honest. I mean, this would be a dream job scenario for him. But overall, as a head coach, the record is not good. He's 26-40. You know, in 4 seasons at UTSA, he was 19-29. And I always do throw a little bit of a caveat, because at programs like that, you're gonna play your body bag games. That's just part and parcel, right? I mean, those are the types of games that fund the athletic department. So if you look back to Frank Wilson's first season at UTSA in 2016, for example, they went on the road and played Colorado State. They played Arizona State. They played at Texas A&M. So the point being, like, the overall record isn't always going to look good. Look, they beat Baylor in his second year. They went to Baylor and won. So, you know, there's always going to be some of those types of games on the schedule. They lost. Then the next year they lost. They played Arizona State, Baylor, Kansas State. You understand the point? So, I'm looking here in 2019. There's a loss at Baylor. They lost at Texas A&M. You get the point. Like, it's hard to look at the overall record, because when you're playing at a place like UTSA, you're going to have baked in losses that are just body bag games. They're guarantee games. So I don't necessarily look at that so much. And then you heard talk about McNeese, where he got hired in January. Then they had to play a spring season right away due to COVID. And there was a probationary period and all different types of stuff that had nothing to do with him. But all that to say, Frank's battled adversity. And he also knows how to motivate. And that's one of the reasons he brought back former players to LSU last Thursday.
We'll do on Thursdays, we call it the huddle up. Former players will come back. They'll walk through these hallways and be able to say, hey, that's where Dad position meeting room. And, oh, look, that's your grandfather on the 1982 team there. Let's go out to the practice field. I practiced here. And we want our former players just to know that you matter. We want them to know that you're invested and you've earned the right to be a part of what we're doing and always will be a part of what we're doing. And so it was initially that. Naturally, emotionally, I felt a need to allow them to give them a stage to say a few words. They said a few words to our team in the limited capacity. But more than anything, it was the interaction. It was the fellowship that they were able to do, tying old with new to make it present and make sense for our team. And so I thought it went extremely well for our student athletes. I thought it went extremely well for our alumni as well and former players.
I don't know if former players talking to the current roster will actually matter for the current roster, but it'll certainly win Frank Wilson tons of favor with fans and former players. Now he's got to go win. He'll have a great opportunity on Saturday in Tuscaloosa against the Alabama Crimson Tide. All right, that'll do it for us here. Please subscribe on your favorite podcast app. If you're on YouTube, smash the like button, subscribe there as well. Until next time, it's Locked on LSU, your team every day.